Welcome back to the WNHH and Community Foundation for Greater New Haven Great Give Radiothon 2018. I'm Paul Bass here with Ratasha Smith.
Hey.
With having the, and I can't believe they call us working for a living. We get to meet for 2 days with 8 people who just do wonderful things in New Haven at nonprofits. Part of the 488 nonprofits in our area.
Wow.
Combining forces for 36 hours to try to raise a total of $1.5 million to keep great works going in New Haven. And you can help with that. Ratasha's going to tell you how in a minute. And this hour, we're going to ask you to support New Haven Legal Assistance Association. New Haven Legal Association. Ratasha, how can they do that?
They can go to www.thegreatgive.org and type in the search bar, and you can donate to this great organization.
New Haven Legal Assistance Association. Yes. And if you feel like it, we would love it if you also want to support WNHH Radio. We are a nonprofit public interest community radio station. If you type in WNHH, you can help us too. We're affiliated with the New Haven Independent, which writes a lot of articles where you will see New Haven Legal Assistance Association mentioned because they do so much of the important work in our city, from defending people who don't have the money to defend themselves in court, whether they're getting evicted from their homes, whether kids are getting poisoned in lead paint, whether their entire housing complex, Church South, needs to be torn down, and all kinds of other problems. Alexis, you run New Haven Legal Associations. Good morning. Thank you for coming in.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
So if people do what Ratasha suggested, and I hope they do, they type in New Haven Legal Assistance Association and give you some money, where will that money go toward? What will it do?
Yeah, so we are one of the oldest legal aid organizations in the country. We were founded.
Aren't you the oldest?
Well, we sometimes say that, but there's others that kind of rival our time limit.
Well, if we're going to believe that Louis Lunch was the first hamburger,
there we go. Everything started in New Haven.
Yes.
I mean, we were officially incorporated in 1964, but actually our history dates back to the 1920s because we were part of the Municipal Legal Aid Bureau.
Oh, so, wow. I never knew that because I always think of the 60s when you had the Great Society programs and you were a demonstration project, originally part of City Hall.
Right.
But then when you started doing stuff the city didn't feel politically comfortable with, you had to be independent.
So that's how we kind of broke off.
But you still have the number 946 as the New Haven number. How did that happen?
We do. So part of the city's charter said that they had to provide a building or a space for the city's oldest. Yeah.
That they have to give space?
Well, they had to give space to legal aid, and what happened over the years is that kind of dwindled down to now they provide our phones. So
they don't pay for your office?
No, they do not pay for our office.
Let's sue them.
But
right?
You got lawyers, man.
The phones are a huge expense.
Documents.
Yeah, right. So we're grateful for that. So have been affiliated with the city for a long time. And
you've sued the city. For instance, you sued the city where a court said that people in Connecticut have a constitutional right under the state constitution to shelter. I remember that suit. I covered that one back in the 90s.
Right. Yeah, long time ago.
Judge DeMayo.
Yep. So we're one of the oldest programs. We, as you said, we help people preserve their housing. We represent a lot of victims of domestic violence and getting temporary restraining orders and making sure that their children are safe. We do a lot of child law, so we represent kids in the New Haven public schools and surrounding towns who need special education services and those kids who are getting expelled from school. We do a lot of public benefits. You've covered a lot of stories with the name Sheldon Taubman in it.
Yes,
Sheldon's one of the most stellar advocates around Medicaid.
He's the most knowledgeable person, I think, in Connecticut who's not getting paid by an evil insurance company to stop people from getting health care.
Right.
He's the most knowledgeable person about how government can make sure people can get health care and what promises they made and how to keep them. And he spends all his time making sure those promises are kept, fighting to keep them kept when budget cuts come in. And he gets consulted by all the top elected officials, decision makers about what to do.
Right. In our state, and he's also consulted by a lot of advocates outside of the state as well. And, over the last year and a half, we've really increased our immigration advocacy as well.
Oh, that's right. That's a biggie. What kind of immigration work do you do?
So most of our work is actually prioritized for victims of crimes. So whether that's a crime that they faced in their home country or here in the United States. So we're doing a lot of people who are seeking asylum, a lot of what are called VAWA cases. That's a Violence Against Women's Act, and U visas. So those are individuals who are afforded certain protections based on crimes that they have
So you have a whole immigration unit now?
We do. So we have 2 of our attorneys are devoted to immigration work, and then we also have a fellow from the organization called Immigrant Justice Corps, which is actually based out of New York City. So that fellow is with us for 2 years.
Super.
He's in his
And
first
that's
year.
been, we have a growing immigrant population in New Haven at a time when immigrant rights are under assault. Tell me about some of the cases you've recently done involving immigrants.
Yeah, so most of our cases are actually involving people from Central and South America. So we've seen a lot of individuals from Guatemala who have faced pretty horrific, really offenses by terrorist organizations in those in that region, in that country. But we also represent a lot of people from the Congo, and we've had a handful of people from Eastern European countries. But these are people who, in some cases, are women who were brought here because of a relationship, and so their potential spouse had promised to sponsor them as a citizen. And in the course of those relationships, domestic violence ensued, and the woman felt that she couldn't leave the relationship. So she's afforded certain protections. We've done a lot around special immigrant juvenile status cases. So those are kids who were brought across the border, who were really essentially abandoned at the border. And so they have certain protections as well if they are of a certain age and came here at a certain period of time. A number of years ago, we did a lot around DACA. And still doing some advocacy around that.
Kids here who were born here, their parents abroad.
Yeah, I mean, I think a big part of our immigration work has really evolved into informing the public about what their rights are. So we're doing a lot of Know Your Rights presentations. We actually just started, which is a partnership with the Community Foundation, to go to detention facilities in Massachusetts and kind of do intakes there and meet with people who are detained and see if whether or not they need legal representation.
I know the Community Foundation identified immigration rights as one of their key goals to address. So I always wonder about legal aid lawyers. I always thought that cops, legal aid lawyers, teachers are the heroes in our community. And, you don't have a lot to work with compared to law firms for wealthy people.
Right.
And you fight uphill battles. You see systemic injustice that because of limits by the federal government passed during the Reagan era, you can't do these class action lawsuits. Like you found problems for individual tenants at Church Street South. Then there's another lawyer, and you did great work. The place coming down, people got safe places to live because of the tenacity of your lawyers. But then it was another lawyer, Dave Rosen, who had to file a class action suit for damages.
So just clarification, we actually can do class actions in our office because we don't receive federal funding from the Legal Services Corporation. There's only one program in Connecticut that does, and that's statewide legal services.
But I thought you couldn't do the Church Street South. Is that because the federal government was involved, HUD?
No, so the case that David Rosen did was actually a personal injury claim, and that's just not work that we do.
Oh, it's just not the work you do.
Right.
Okay.
Right. So, but if it had been in a class action in sort of another substantive area, or if there had been another legal argument, we could have done that.
So one thing I always wondered is burnout. I mean, it's amazing, Sheldon Talmadge. It's been 20 years that he's been just mired in this fight to keep Medicaid going so that poor people can get health care. And it's a big fight. He's up against all the big guys. Or so many you see possible terrible things happen to the immigrants. They have to work with a system that's so many built-in obstacles to getting justice or tenants. How do you keep going without just being burned out or just going home at night and falling apart?
Yeah, so, about a month ago, I met with one of our long-serving attorneys, Connie Frontis, who's been doing domestic violence work for over 30 years. I kind of asked her that question, if she liked what she does and if she wanted to shift to another area of law. And, what she said is she's just amazed at how her clients are so resilient and how she can empower them and help them overcome, the huge obstacles that they have in front of them. And I think that's what inspires her. And so I think a lot of us have similar stories as we're just sort of amazed at how our clients can overcome the circumstances that they're in, because they're the ones who are up against everything. I mean, I think, we fight a lot, whether it's the city or other federal agencies, but they're constantly fighting. At least most of us can go home and we've got some kind of relief. Like theirs is kind of a 24-hour, our clients is a 24-hour cycle of fighting.
And we're talking about the never-ending blockbuster superhero series called New Haven Legal Assistance Association, and they're here on
should be our new tagline.
The Great Give Radiothon, the Avengers, the Great Give Radiothon 2018 on WNHH FM, New Haven's home for community radio. We're here at the Community Foundation's Ratasha Smith. And we're asking folks this hour to go to thegreatgive.org. Thegreatgive.org. We never forget that and you type in New Haven Legal Assistance Association. And I know I type that in often because I'm a reporter in New Haven. If you care about anything, you type in what they do. And
We
please,
appreciate the
please
press.
send them some support this hour so they can get their goal. Okay. So, Chertsey South was a big story. That was a 301 unit apartment building, federally subsidized across from the train station. That was allowed to deteriorate for years and years. People living on unhealthy conditions, asthma, stuff falling apart, kids can't breathe. And finally, only because of legal aid. I mean, the government here tried to get the federal government to do something about it because the federal government paid millions of dollars a year in rent to this private owner who the Fed said, well, you're fine. This place is fine. It's healthy. And it took the tenacity of legal aid's lawyers like Amy Marks and Shelley White to insist that the tenants get some justice and that they get put someplace where their kids can breathe. And now, and that then when Chertsey South is going to be torn down and rebuilt, that they have a decent place to live. What do you take from that, Alexis Smith? Why was it only legal aid who could make that happen? And what did you learn from that episode?
So I think that was really a great example of the collaborative partnerships that we have with other organizations. So we had gotten some referrals from Alice Rosenthal, who is an attorney at Center for Children's Advocacy, running their medical legal partnership at the Yale pediatric unit. And so she was seeing a number of kids coming in with asthmatic conditions on a regular basis. And so the physicians got in touch with her and said, hey, something's going on here. These kids are coming from the same location. Can you look into it? And so we really worked closely with Alice on that and sort of really taking the Department of Health to task and the city to task to say, these are just conditions that are unacceptable for families to be living in. And there was a huge number of families there. I think that's what struck people.
There
is
were
how many people were
288
living.
families. That's how many were occupied.
Right. And like you said, Paul, I mean, that
the
had
follow-up was incredible because the government promised something. It wouldn't happen. It took years for them to get everybody out when they said it was going to be months.
And that had been going, I mean, those conditions had deteriorated over a long, long stretch of time. And, Amy and Shelley worked, like crazy on that. But also one of our paralegals, Daisy Ruiz. Who, she was. She worked very closely with the tenants and sort of gaining their trust and gaining their confidence. Daisy is bilingual, so many of the families living there spoke Spanish. So she was able to, not only do kind of like the nitty gritty translation and interpretation, but also just making connections with them. And so that was really, really critical.
How do you get clients to trust you? How do people a lot of people come in, they don't always feel like they come from the same world the tenants live in. How do they trust you to take the risk and take on power?
Yeah, so I think, everyone has their own individual style. But I think as legal aid lawyers, we kind of have an instinct of getting people to feel comfortable. We can empathize with situations. We can sympathize with situations. So it's really all about comfort levels and, if it's little things like when you meet with the client, sitting next to them as opposed to sitting across from a desk, having the desk as a barrier. And so you are making it so you kind of symbolize we're on the same side kind of thing. But I think it takes time. Trust isn't developed right away. I think our clients are up against so many agencies and they're constantly either being told no or shifted to different places and so what they want to know from legal aid is that we're going to be there for them and we're going to work on their behalf. We're going to work hard and we're on their same side. We're not an adversary.
Chertsey South was shocking. And so to hear about Norton Street a couple years later, it was even
66 Norton. Yeah.
Frankly, I was angered when I heard about that. Are you guys going to be involved with them as well? And why does this keep happening?
Yeah, so we've been involved with them. Our housing unit has also done advocacy around that, and that's actually been led by one of our fellows in the office. So this is a brand new lawyer who's been with us about a year, actually working on another project, which is our school-based legal clinic. And so Kate Pecorilla has really taken on the lead on this. So it was a very similar type of situation, although I think more dramatic in the sense that people were told
45 minutes to get out of their house.
Yeah, a matter of minutes to get out.
Or they worried the building would collapse.
Right. And so you had situations where people were asked to leave, so suddenly they weren't able to get things that they needed, like their medication, right? And then sort of the follow-up was they were placed in hotels that weren't necessarily appropriate for families to be living in for a number
drug
of
and
reasons.
prostitution dens.
Right?
Right. So yeah, so we've been involved in that. And that really boils down to, the it's a combination of the landlord and the city being responsible for relocation assistance of these families, and that's New Haven is not a place where that's a unique problem. Hartford actually has a huge problem with that, and our sister organization up there, Greater Hartford Legal Aid, has done some advocacy around that over the last couple of years. So yes, we are involved.
How many lawyers work for you in New Haven?
We have 15.
How many offices?
Just one.
Oh, you're not in the Valley anymore?
Oh, so we are. So I don't consider that office. What we're doing in the Valley is great. We actually have partnered with Team out there. And so they've given us office space.
Great.
So we rent from them, and we're doing office hours on a weekly basis there. So we have our attorneys and paralegals rotate time out there. And that's been great because, there is a high poverty population living out there. What we found is that people find it so difficult to get to New Haven for transportation reasons or...
And they have to go to court there or whatever?
Yeah, so some cases from the Valley, it depends on what kind of cases, it goes to Milford. Some even further down the Valley might go to Bridgeport, and then some are coming to New Haven. So it's been great to meet people where they are. Mm-hmm. So we remove that transportation barrier, and also I think the big city barrier, people coming out to New Haven as the city. So that's been nice. So we've over the last year we've been doing that, and we've seen an uptick in the cases in the Valley that we've gotten.
Uh-huh.
And it's been a range from our core substantive areas, which, housing, family, education, benefits. But we've also seen some consumer cases, which we don't do usually, depending upon the nature of it. So we've either referred those cases out, or if someone's interested in taking on that issue, we do that. So
lead paint. So now you're always early on a trend. So there's a lot of look at lead paint in New Haven. A lot of houses that were built before 1978 have lead paint in them. There are a lot of kids have been exposed to poisons. And, the city people can't stand you often, and the landlords, because you're insisting that the law be upheld and people's rights be protected, and they feel like they have enough pressure. They feel understaffed in the city's case. They can't get to it all, so you force them to. Mm-hmm. I've noticed your lawyers showing up a lot in court lately for families living in apartments and lead paint, getting them put up in other places and repairs. What are you finding, and what is the nature of the problem?
Yeah. So I think it's really been an eye-opener for many of us, because I think most people have the perception that problems with lead paint is outdated and or happens in really large metropolitan areas. So, whether it's Chicago or Detroit, but in fact, the research is showing that many sort of smaller cities are having this problem. So I think we've all been surprised at the scale and the numbers of the issue. So really what our advocacy has been around is working with/against the Department of Health, in terms of figuring out what inspections that they have made over time, what kinds of reports are available, from the city's perspective, what they knew, and so we've had some
when they knew it.
Knew it. So we've had some hotly contested cases. I mean, I think the bottom line is that no family should be living in these kinds of conditions. And if we want to make
bottom line is you're fighting for it. New Haven Legal Assistance Association. Right. So if you want to help them fight for your rights and our community's rights, you go to thegreatgive.org and you type in New Haven Legal Assistance Association. Are you proud of the work you do every day, Alexis
Absolutely.
Smith? I'm so proud of what New Haven Legal Assistance does in my city and the change you're making. So keep it up.
Thank you.
And I hope that we can help you in this hour at the Great Giver. Where are we before we take a break, Ratasha Smith?
We're at $1.2 million.
Oh, we made the 1.2. We made the 1.2.
Nice.
Okay,
Yes.
We're trying for $1.5 million. And that's till 8 o'clock
How
tonight.
many more hours?
We got
8.
8 more hours. All right. The last thing, we got to pour it on, folks. And before this hour is up, while you listen to a musical interlude from the Afro-Semitic Experience, this is the time to give it up for the New Haven Legal Assistance Association. New Haven Legal Association. This is the hour to help them meet their goals and to get us closer to $1.5 million. Ratasha Smith will be back in just a couple minutes to hear from some more groups doing great work in our city whose help is needed. Your help we need. And join us back then at WNHH, New Haven's home for community radio.